Hello.
Hello. I haven't been to one of these before, so
Hello. Hi. I don't know. Yeah, I was expecting maybe they've gone for a coffee break. I was expecting a fair number of them to be here, or have I just missed?
yeah, I hadn't made it to any of these before, but I had it in the calendar for 10, and I understood it had been moved to 10:30.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Maybe they have moved it collectively. Well, great to have you. Yeah. Join us. Thank you so much. And Ben's joining. Yeah. Have you got access to the Dropbox where some of our machinations are? Have you
I
got that?
believe I have had an email, although I haven't had a look yet.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
a. Hi, Ben.
Morning, guys.
Yeah, there's a and there's an outline paper under development in that Dropbox, which is still somewhat rough, but it's starting to pull together various perspectives on the data front. Alice, just remind us what I mean,
Who I am. Yeah.
what you'd be looking to contribute into this. Yeah.
Sure. So I've been involved in the SCRC collaboration, sort of leading on the research software engineering side of things.
Right.
Coordinating the sort of software engineers in the volunteer effort over the summer, and now involved in the data pipeline grant.
And have you been involved in the EPIC in the EPIC side of things, the Ian McKendrick stuff?
So through this collaboration I have, but I actually I actually work in Fusion, so we do software engineering and data management to the UK Atomic Energy Authority. So I'm only involved since the grant volunteering effort.
I mean, yeah, we're trying to struggle our way to imagine what a future ecosystem might look like. I mean, that's really what we're looking for, and best practice in those regards. That's what we're kind of seeking to at least try and describe in the paper.
I think I thought I'd listen in today and see.
Yeah, that's great.
Like I could contribute.
Yeah, good. Hello, everybody.
Right.
Great. So we've just got half an hour today. I've got to chair another meeting at 11, and I sent round a document in the wee hours, which was an attempt to synthesize various bits and pieces that we already had. And I think I said in the email, to my surprise, we're already well over 4,000 words. Of course, a lot of that needs to be kind of crisped up and referenced and all the rest of it. But it strikes me that there's plenty to say. I was also interested in looking at some of the other efforts as they're starting to emerge and get referenced and more structured. So main thing I did was seek to integrate Jasmine's material, and then also think about where we could include those rather good observations from Ian McKendrick around the EPIC experience, what's happening there. An awful lot you could suddenly realize there's an awful lot you could say in all of these areas. Yeah, so where are we? And of course, there's a timeline, and the timeline is all very kind of scary. It's remind myself that first drafts, they were hoping for some version of a first draft for the 1st of March. But I think we might be a little bit adrift of that, as I say. But I mean, clearly, we can't afford to be very much. So it's about really, I think, looking at, I thought the advantage in putting all the sections together and then just trying to at least get some degree of developed thread is that we can be all beginning to work and concentrate on improving at least a first draft. And I guess the other thing that struck me as I assembled them was that there's a balance between lessons learned and the actual lived experience of data use in this pandemic. And of course, all of the interesting comments about what could work better in the future. So, you know, what does a surveillance infrastructure look like, et cetera, et cetera. I was reading the policy chapter, which I thought was quite interesting in that regard, in that it came over as a really quite a useful set of almost of recommendations as much as anything, you know, that in future we should be mindful of these things rather than just lots of reflections on what happened. Although I think in the data context, some reflection on that's probably going to be unavoidable. So yeah, I suppose perhaps first of all, just Dennis and Valerie, is it the 1st of March trying to get these to our editor, epidemics editor. We might be a week adrift of that, I suspect. Is that going to be deeply problematic? Okay. Okay. Good.
No, I mean, we you know, we would like to be able to have time to get people, you know, get it out to people to make some comment before we actually submit things and so on. As we said in that email, Hans Heestebeek is going to look at all of them, and his comments will be very useful, but probably we'll want other people, different people for each paper. So the 1st of March was an ideal to concentrate minds, and you know, one of the policy papers obviously there, but most are not quite ready yet. They're getting there, but
yeah. That's interesting. I happened upon that first, and that rather made me think, oh my God, there's everybody. But looking through the others, I could see that there's a fair variation. So the thing I sent around, data challenges, integrated sections as of yesterday, 24th. Well, was just an attempt to pull things together, as I say. The section on I mean, there's never a perfect way of doing this. I hadn't changed the section on data engineering principles. The section on data and pandemic models, clearly there's something to say on data availability in the current pandemic. It's quite interesting. Some of the lessons learned and availability for future pandemics. And this data skills for future pandemics, I think that can probably move forward into a section we've got on data skills. So I think that's we don't need to repeat that there. The more challenging thing is to integrate, not more challenging, but to integrate Glenn and Ben and kind of Richard's view on the life cycle implications, because I think that they're important. It's just trying to make sure there's a consistent style and some referencing it out. I don't know whether Ben and Glenn or Richard want to say anything about that at this stage, what they think a good way forward would be on that.
Were you anticipating that joining up with Jasmina's?
I think, yeah, well, or we could have a separate section. If there's a rational way of separating out and saying, look, there's on the one hand, there's the data sources and the impacts back onto the modeling exercise. And then there's a slightly more integrated linked dependency view of the world, which also comes through in the Ian McKendrick view of things, that you've actually got to have a whole set of functional roles if you really want to be serious about joining these elements together. I reasonably, I don't have a strong view on that.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's going to be too long as a single section.
Yeah, it may well break it out and break it out and perhaps have reference to integrated life cycles, and that might be as much aspirational as anything, because I mean I think a lot of the points you make in there is we're not there yet, but in an ideal world we would be. Would that seem reasonable, Richard?
I mean, I think it's interesting you say I haven't looked at any of the other chapters at all. It's interesting you say the policy ones is a kind of statement of how we ought to think about things going forward, and I think that there's quite a lot we can contribute there, and I think the same's true on the visualization side from that we may be talking about later, you know, about ways of taking this forward more than reflections. Because I mean, the reflections are important, but I think that there are some fairly clear plans now that at least that we've been developing that we think are, you know, that are worth laying out.
Yeah, that would be I think that's exactly the way to kind of try and bear that in mind. I think it'll be helpful to have lessons, if you like, the lived experience, particularly where it has been, you know, positive but also challenging. So I think that also gives people a sense that they recognize what they're reading in this. But the aspirational stuff, or what could look better in terms of an engineered environment. So maybe that's the way to rephrase the life cycle piece, is to perhaps lift that out as a section that's referring to what dependencies might look like, and whether you can stand up an ecosystem ultimately that has all of these functional roles identified. I mean, not all of them. I mean, some of them will live in the same person. Alice, do you want to? I know you this is your first meeting dipped into. Do you want to just say something about the work you have been looking to stand up, involved in?
So I think
as I understand it, what might be relevant is a link to the kind of between the software engineering, data engineering skills and those other data roles, for instance, and to describe how the software infrastructure can support the.
Yeah, and again, I think just coming back to what we have, so the data model analysis, life cycles, dependencies perspective, thinking about that as recommendations in a certain sense, we just lift that out of the current section. The data platforms perspective, rather than banging on about just what AWS did or Google did, I think the things like Open Safely, I think we will talk about that, but the aspiration to do things and bridge, as you say, data engineering into software engineering. That's quite a lot of what, again, Ian McKendrick's worrying about, I think, in his input.
Absolutely,
which I thought was very helpful.
And I'm quite interested. I've done a bit of work on sort of trying to champion like new ways of team-based research, where you have these specialized roles available to research teams. So from a sort of policy philosophical perspective, what are the barriers to having all of these people working together in these multidisciplinary teams that let all this stuff happen, and how, for instance, in our volunteer effort, we were able to overcome a lot of those barriers because suddenly everything was available, with no funding considerations. And
looking at Ian's functional distinct. There's an amazing cast of characters there, and you think, oh my God, I'm gonna 15 or whatever functional roles, and then you think, how do you coordinate all of that? Richard, in terms of the stuff you've been working on, thinking about, how do we reconcile the perfect functional analysis of all these different roles against what reality is likely to be able to support?
I think I think that the critical issue is that reality will only support so much of this, but I do feel that Alice is absolutely right, that we do need to stress this. As academics, I think we've always ended up with, in the epidemiological world, we've always ended up with an epidemiologist who was then expected to do all the other roles as well. And I think what's become crystal clear during this pandemic is that there's huge value, and we've always appreciated this, but then when we push back against the government for more funding, they've said, no, you can't. You can have another epidemiologist, or you can have an RSE, and that's you choose. And then the academics have always gone for perhaps the wrong solution there. And I think that being able to say, look, there are all of these roles. Yes, individuals can fulfill several of them, but they can't fulfill all of them. We need visualization experts, we need RSEs, we need data experts, we need the epidemiologists, and we need the software, and we need all of these components. And you might be able to do 2 or 3, but if you're trying to do 8, then you're not going to do them well.
And you have to think creatively about how to fill those gaps, right? Because it's never going to be that every research project can, hire one of each of these things dedicated, so ways to call on the specialists for the bits of the project where you need them to have some initial.
So what would be really helpful, in the light of that is if you might take a look at the overall paper, and think of it in terms of, well, this will be wonderful, but here's at least the recommendations we make and the lessons learned. And that would be excellent. And I can then look to reintegrate those in. But I think it'd be good to have a separate statement of intent, a little bit like in McKendrick's points, where it's just a page of reminders about this is how complicated a set of actors in this space could look like. But notwithstanding that, we have really learned from the pandemic that just loading this all onto epidemiologists isn't the way to get a great result.
So something occurred to me a couple of months ago about this, that maybe somebody with slightly longer term memories might best reflect on is that the very first couple of grants that I was involved in were pre-FEC kind of stuff, and they all involved like 10% of this person, 20% of this person, 10% of this person. They were all kind of, yes, there was an epidemiologist or whatever, but there were lots of fractional people, and we kind of moved away from that model with FEC, as far as I can see. But I don't have much experience pre-FEC, and I wonder the extent to which we ought to be thinking about moving back to that kind of model and say, no, actually we went too far. Yeah, fine, we need core funding for the institutes, and FEC is a good idea, but we do need to have core RSEs, core data scientists, core, whatever, all of these areas.
That's a very good point. Actually, in fact, EPSRC in particular moved away from really widespread support of platform grants, for example, which allowed that blending of skills together. Some program grants, but not platform grants. Yeah. Okay. And then the other thing to just reflect on in this paper as is that. I think I say that there is the question about how we would want to integrate visualization, data visualization, which I think I'd welcome thoughts on, because in a sense that's been a really interesting facet. And again, I thought Min's paper was really helpful on that, just kind of strikingly apparent just how much work there is there and how that may or may not have been made widely available. Do you think that might actually warrant just a separate section? I mean, I don't think we should be precious about the structure we have, but we have to also be able to compress it down into less than 6,000 words, at least the overall chapter. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I wasn't really sure the extent to which it fitted into a data chapter. I mean, I was wondering whether, I mean, I don't know what your limits are on the size of this special issue, but there's so much stuff that the visualization people have contributed. And they have already written a paper conveniently. So I'm just wondering the extent to which, although it's very late, whether it might be worth thinking about an entire visualization paper.
I think that would be perfectly possible. I mean, some of the, I can't remember whether I said this last time, or it might have been another group, one begins to lose track of which one's which, but several of the other papers, there have been areas where we felt that it's not so much that new work needs to be done as that existing work needs to be known by this community and employed and so on. And I don't know to what extent, but it sounds a bit as if visualization might fit into that. So it would be, so what we've had with a couple of the others was to have a sort of a linked, more expository paper that discusses what's out there and what those sort of methods have to offer and so on. And it might, I mean, I don't know how that fits here, but it might be that it does. But certainly in terms of the special issue, because it's online, there isn't a limit to the number of papers particularly. So we can add a few extra papers and that won't be a problem. So if you felt that was the way to go for this, that would be great.
Min, what's your view, take on that?
But I think, my thinking is I agree with all said, and particularly Richard said. I think the whole scope of visualization, the potential use during the modeling process, it probably at the beginning certainly was underestimated. And if you only need to think of the total amount of time series modeling scientists need to see, and not only just the real world time series, as well as the time series generated by models, is more than any stock market data. And we don't have an infrastructure to support, to let the modeling scientists to see those time series quickly. Stock brokers see those data at second level. So they can see that immediately, they can anytime they see it. And also the total number of stockbrokers, many more than the modeling scientists. So that actually the workload is just distributed among them. If you take in the modeling scientist point of view, it's like a sort of a one modeling scientist equivalent to 100 stockbrokers. And the amount of data they need to see even more, but we don't have an infrastructure level support for it. And you only need to looking at it, you just see how the lack of support from the infrastructure point of view. So the whole idea for the visualization is we're collecting all the people, as many as we can, through entire UK to support the modeling scientists there. And the conclusion or the reflection we made at the end is that there's a couple of things. First thing, in the long run, we think that the visualization should be part of all the major infrastructure in the future deal with data. And not only my pandemic, in fact, myself, I made a recommendation to on the cybersecurity side, and for at least 5 years, 6 years, I keep telling the colleagues there they need to have that level of support. And the second is we need to somehow have the knowledge infrastructure, as I think a few colleagues mentioned before, is we can call upon experts we need at any time we need. And that again, we demonstrate that we can do that if we have some way.
What is the status of the preprint, the archive paper you sent us? What happened with that, Min?
It's free to be used as a submitted to sort of the visualization colleagues, the co-authors are supposed to have a vote in this week or next week to decide where to submit to. I mean,
it is a thought that with not much modification, this could be quite an interesting freestanding contribution. I think in that sense, and allows.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that adding in a bit more on the end about how we ought to move forward with this, in the same way we've been talking about with the data side would be a really helpful addition to the current paper. But yeah, it's
Dennis. Yeah.
So I was just going to say, I think I'm not quite understanding the detail here, but I think you have the two options within this volume. One is to have a paper that really is in the sort of challenges format of self-contained challenges to do with visualization. The other is, if what you want to say about visualization is not really quite in that format, and it's maybe particularly fulfills this function Valerie was mentioning of bringing this to the attention of the epidemiological community, then the second possibility is to have perhaps a section in the data paper called Challenges to do with Visualization, but then have the paper as a separate standalone paper in the sort of additional papers part of the volume, whereas, as Valerie said, we've already got one or two which are perhaps of a tutorial nature. I'm not sure if that's what you would call this, but which, but papers which we wish to include in the volume but are not really quite in the challenges format. So I think, is that fairly clear choice, do you think, Nigel?
Yeah, no, I think it is a clear choice.
And I think it should probably be between you as the lead on this and Min, or the people who might contribute on visualization, to negotiate what you think is most satisfactory.
I mean, clearly, if those authors are thinking about this right at the moment, that is the time to have the discussion. I mean, I think either would work at this point. Hi, Jasmina. Hi.
I wanted to say something, if I may.
I didn't see you there. I'm so sorry. You've been lurking there all this time. I'm so sorry.
Not all this time. I have to admit, I hadn't been there for very long, but I had my video off. I wanted to say the visualization aspect. It's a little bit of a sword with two edges, because one aspect is yes, we need visualization, and we need a sort of definitely for stakeholders to understand much more visual the results and the data, where it is, how it looks historically, and how it looks in the future. But at the same time, a lot of the time, the visualization, and I don't know if you agree with this, can patch things within the code which are not so clear. And so it has to be this clear balance between the visualization being a tool that is run simultaneously with predictions and estimations and calibration, rather than just digging from a library source that exists from historic past work. And so a lot of, for example, there is a Shiny app, which is an app a lot of people are using, and a lot of people are using it in two different ways, as I just described. So they run a set of simulations and they post them into a library set, and from there you have sliders on the Shiny app, and based on those sliders you then look at those scenarios really. But a smaller number of them, and sort of there is a model that is developed by Christoph Fraser's groups at Oxford, who does this on the go. This is the EPIST model for our estimations, and that is very slow at the same time, because it's calibrating. So if you open the website, it's very slow in the process. So I think it's not as easy as just having visualizations of data and models, but there is interesting things to be said there. So I would support a separate part that explores the strengths and weaknesses of doing visualizations in a real life pandemic and beyond.
If I could add a little bit, so we need to strictly separate. This is the idea Richard got on day one when I first talked to Richard. Is we need to separate the visualization for the public from the visualization for the modeling. And they are very, very different, the game we're playing. And so in this pandemic, the UK or many other countries doing very well on the visualization for the public by disseminating information. The modeling scientists are very, very different. And when they look at the data, and are working with all the modeling, including machine learning and including CFD and the type of modeling, and the people need to see the modeling output as quick as they can, so they can aware some parameter may not be good. So there's a lot of visualization, specialized design for to visualize the sensitivity of the parameters and to look at how the model will apply to different areas, how they have an impact. So you need to compare with the real data immediately. And uncertainty analysis, you all need a type of specialized visualizing to see the uncertainty. And all those, for example, Glenn here are working on uncertainty. So they generate over 200 time series in one go. How do you see the 200 time series in a way you can vaguely see the uncertainty and sensitivity in that way? And this is all the things we need for the modeling scientists, because unlike the previous modeling for pandemic, the modeling was always a post hoc activity. But this time we actually have to do modeling in real time, and we needed to change the model. So you need to give all the support to make the modeling scientists the time as the cost on the seeing the data as low as possible, so they can use their brain capability to think about the models rather than think about how to process a spreadsheet, or even how to think about to telling the public how wonderful their model is. But that we need to give all the capability they have for doing the thinking.
Okay, look, I think this is. I mean, that point itself is something that would be interesting. We could have a shortest section that points out to that in the context of the data chapter, and whether we need what the form of a freestanding longer discussion on that would be to be determined. Okay, Richard.
Just very quickly, just something that occurred to me, seeing Ben pop up again, is the extent to which it might be worth having something in the uncertainty quantification chapter about visualization challenges to do with that, and and in the data chapter. And there are a couple of places that we've really got engaged with this, and then that all feeds into the kind of more expositional visualization chapter, saying, look, these are all the cool things we can do.
Yeah, and obviously as this develops, as the collection develops, there'll be a lot of really quite interesting cross references. I'm very aware that we're up against the clock again, and we will be a bit next week when I've got, again, at 10:30 till 11. The following week, I've got a complete clear hour. We're going to.
Can I just check, Nigel? Did we not say that we are changing this for 10:30 to 11:30?
Yeah. Well, 11:30. Yeah, but I can't do 11:30 today. So
yeah, that's okay. But in future, sorry, because I was gonna, yeah, okay.
Yeah, 10 till 11:30. Yeah, we did, and that's next week and the week after. That's what we'll be doing. I mean, we would like to kind of really make some progress in the next couple of weeks. What I'd like to suggest is, again, Ian's comments been very helpful. I don't know how engaged he might want to be as an author. Hopefully you will.
Just to say, he sent his apologies today. He's got other things on, but
yeah, definitely.
Is this Ian Vernon?
No, Ian
McKendrick.
Okay.
What I would suggest is, I think we've got the shape more or less of a stable chapter now. What I'd like is perhaps Jasmine and I could actually just deepen the chapter on modeling that we've smoothed out. If Glenn and Ben, Richard could be thinking about how we lift out the life cycle stuff and make that more recommendation oriented. I think the stuff around institutions can kind of, I say, write itself, but I mean, we know what we would want to broadly say in that space. The policy stuff has been enriched by the policy chapter and also by Ian's comments. I just think there's a question about where we locate elements like the visual data and visualization might just be a selection of the models and not labor that too much. If Alice, you could put together just maybe a page of points that you would like to bring to our attention in terms of future ecosystems or, you know.
Yeah, I do think that could actually be potentially a place to include. It could be that link to kind of wider sets of skills you need, including the visualization, the software engineering, the various.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a nice way to kind of pull the chapter to a conclusion, isn't around what's this.
I think those same cultural challenges, I think, you know, Min was referring to some of them, and it's the same with the software and the data engineering, and it's all the things that you can't expect every individual epidemiologist to do all of for themselves, isn't it?
So Jasmine, are you okay if I try and reach out to you more on that section as well in the meantime?
Yes, please. You didn't last time, so that's why I didn't want to hassle you.
I was doing it late last night. Well, early this morning. That's when I was doing.
I actually looked at it as you were looking at it late last night, and I thought I'm not gonna interfere with it now. Maybe over the weekend, if you are working over the weekend.
Yeah, I will be. Yeah, and Min, if you could get some resolution from your community as to whether. I think it would be a great freestanding chapter, but I mean, I think I hear what Dennis is saying. There may be cases where we just want to draw attention to the community more generally to this kind of work. Yeah,
I think definitely we'd like to see the opportunity if we put to the vote to the co-authors, if that option is available. Then
change the perspective somewhat, won't it? Because the challenge format is a little bit different than the expository format. As
we can change it. I think the changing the revise the chapter itself isn't the problem, and revise the paper itself isn't the problem. I think it mainly is even we submitted to a different journal, there would be some change has to be made, and the key question is. What we don't want to happen is Richard and I both were involving, and Alice as well, involving the paper. We didn't want it is we put in the vote, and then they vote for this particular special issue. Then the issue says no, you don't have a place for it, okay. and that would be a disaster for Richard, me, and Alice, and
understood.
Yeah. So I think you and your co-authors really just have the choice as to whether it could be, if you chose, a part of the challenges thing, but then would need a bit of probably refocusing or perhaps.
I think we would talk about challenges, and then we use the existing work to demonstrate that challenges we can successfully deal with the challenges. So it's more like a feasibility.
I've got to bail out now. If you want to carry on the conversation just to crisp up any additional ideas, please do. As I say, I think we've got a reasonably semi-stable structure now, and it is about just refining it and making it slightly more scholarly in the context of referenced. And
I just check. So if I were to read this latest thing that was sent round, is that sufficient for me to then send my comments? Do I need to go back to any other?
I think you'd obviously see where your contribution would sit in that those final couple of sections. Yeah. Okay, so we're meeting at 10:30, as Jasmine reminds me, next Thursday. And are you going to carry on? I'm just, as I say, I've just got to move out, or is it worth us carrying on? Yeah, you carry on, and I will.
I am going to go as well, but we'll touch base over the weekend, Nigel.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to go too, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm happy to stay on for a second if Min has any sort of further queries about this division. We could just maybe have a quick word with Dennis as well.
Let's do that. Okay, and see you next week.
Yeah, that's good.
Bye.
Again,
bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Ben, if you're still there, if you've got a second, the other thing was the extent which came up then as to whether there was something about visualization in the estimation paper. So I suppose that's an extra thing to think about.
I think
definitely.
The suggestion was in the uncertainty quantification paper.
Yeah. Well, that yes, that is the estimation one, isn't it? or do you think it's in the
in the tutorial one
in the tutorial one?
Yeah, okay, we were going to have a section in that talking about, because we're working with the uncertainty quantification group or some of the people in Min's group as well on some methods specifically for UQ.
Okay.
So there was going to be a section in there, but it's still early days, so we can reorganize it if there's a strong feeling towards a separate paper. That's also fine.
Yeah. So there's lots of flexibility really, and it's a question of trying to decide the actual challenges. Just for maybe for Alice's benefit at least, the idea was very much looking forward to future pandemics. Not, I mean, obviously a lot, given where we're at, an awful lot of the motivation is coming out of what's happening at the moment, what hasn't happened, and what we would have liked to have had, and all the rest of it. But the idea is very much a sort of forward-looking focus, so that we can contribute something, hopefully that's got some lasting value.
Yeah, we had a very interesting panel discussion about research software engineers' contribution to pandemic modelling efforts, and there were 3 different projects of very different sort of scales and structures doing exactly that kind of. What was your experience from this pandemic, and what would it teach you about how things could be? You know, if things were to improve between now and next time, you know, what position would you prefer to be in next time?
Exactly.
Kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know, this probably is the most appropriate paper where that stuff lives. I don't know whether you know if any of the other chapters have any kind of software focused section. I don't want to sort of shoehorn things in here where they don't fit or anything like that. But,
I don't think so. I guess it is the estimation or the data papers really that are the most obvious ones.
If you're writing about the modelling workflows here, I think that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one might expect cross references between the modelling and estimation papers and this one. But,
yeah. Because I guess a lot of the work
that's fine. I mean, I think that's again part of the reason for trying to have a stage where people look at the papers before they're finally submitted, and hopefully Valerie and I and hopefully some others can, including any of you who wish to, you know, once we got them, these drafts are all going to be in the Dropbox, so anyone can look at them. And, you know, so if you have any particular topic and you think, is it right that we've covered it here? Would it fit better somewhere else, or whatever? You know, the ABS would be grateful if people would do a little bit of digging around like that and come up with a suggestion, you know, whether to move something or to just put in a cross reference.
Yeah, I think Nigel's suggestion of writing sort of some standalone comments first, rather than trying to judge where to slot things in when I'm less familiar with the.
Well, that was again that was really what we were trying to suggest to people, that they should, you know, having adopted their particular topic, in this case data, they should write everything that they think is relevant. And if it then means that they find out that someone else has thought exactly the same, you know, imagine could be exactly the same paragraph as occurred to someone else in the estimation chapter, then we just need to look at that and negotiate a solution. But it's much better that both groups come up with it than that each one thinks, no, that might be someone else's territory, I won't do it.
Sure.
But also the perspective would tend to be different.
Yeah, exactly.
So often you'll want it in both places, but perhaps just with a cross-reference between them.
Exactly. It won't really be the same paragraph, because it'll be being, you know, it could be the same thing being looked at from 2 different points of view, in which case maybe a cross-reference, but there may also be an overlap or modifications to suggest.
Yeah, because I mean the goal is the same in both cases, right? It's all about sort of trust and reproducibility. So whenever we're thinking about it from the software perspective, it's either about sort of quality and trust, or about automation and enabling reproducibility. And I think that often that does fit into this sort of data engineering picture, really. It's how
I think that
following that track all the way through, isn't it? So,
yeah, that sounds very much so belong in this chapter, whereas, you know, the estimation chapter would be looking at the same thing, but more from what they're wanting to get use, what they're wanting to use, and as I say, and expecting someone else, as you say, to be considering the problems of providing it to them and verifying whatever. Yeah.
So is there anything else you need to know, Min, in order to talk to your collaborators, co-authors?
I think I'll probably email the team. Sort of probably the wording we would say is there will be an opportunity for submitting a paper with the changing focus, giving more emphasis on the challenging aspect, and we will probably reduce some of the reflections on the visualization perspective, because the among all the reflections, the infrastructure and the resources, and as well as there's other reflection overly narrow towards the visualization side. Part of that is the visualization itself, is people usually thinking they need a more lengthy requirement analysis. And in the pandemic, we took an approach. We didn't do a lengthy requirement analysis, and we just get on with it. That is also part of the experience. But definitely from an infrastructure support point of view, both the technical infrastructure and knowledge infrastructure is really a kind of a challenge we should build. And also the misunderstanding about the visualization was only for dissemination purpose was actually one of the a major issue, is not utilized visualization enough in the whole modeling process. And that's from day one, I immediately knew that was a problem. The way we did it is we tried to do something to demonstrate, to say, have a look at just really you can use visualization to help. And I always jokingly say that stockbrokers visualize data on a second basis was never for the purpose of dissemination. They only visualize to save their time. Imagine there's no visualization there. The time cost for a stockbroker would be tremendously expensive, and saving time and saving the memory is one of the main purpose of visualization. Time series is not something you can remember easily. So that's the visualization essentially is just reduce the memory. You can just have a quick look if you can't remember what's the previous status of something. Yeah, so if it's okay with the team here, and we can offer a possibility of having a paper in a independent paper in this special issue. If we can do that, then that will see how the reaction would be.
I did want to, obviously it's up, I guess it's up to Valerie and Dennis and you, but it does strike me that the current format would fit quite well in terms of an expository kind of paper, rather than having to rewrite everything in terms of challenges. That's
I think
my perspective.
And I think that so that's there's two options. One is to recast it completely into challenges format, but the other, which I think I would agree with Glenn, sounds attractive, is to write it, as you want to write it, as it is at present, but to contribute a section or possibly two sections to the data paper of challenges, and they could be quite compressed. You could put 2 or 3 different challenges in one section, because there would be this backup to which people could refer. So I think you should put it to your collaborators that they have 2 options, and so come back to us and when you have discussed it.
Okay. And I think if you do that latter one, Min, we could probably talk to each other about how to structure something that covered.
Yeah.
We've talked about how it is a lot of the same sort of cultural people challenges about getting the right skills into teams and things.
I think if we want to put more challenge as a section in the data chapter, in the data paper, and we can do it, but we probably will do it separately, but not involving every single co-author, because we don't want to suddenly lump another 21 all co-authors' names into the data paper without much contribution in the writing.
If I'm right, Dennis was suggesting that that might be as well as your separate paper with all the co-authors. That would be maybe just you contributing.
So the separate, so that's maybe an advantage again of having the separate paper, but also a contribute, which it, in the format that it is at present, because that can have, if it has 21 authors, that's fine. But as regards the integrating it into the data paper, I would suggest that should be, at most maybe 2 or 3 of you should be the people who join the data paper team to write the contribution to that. Something like that.
That's good. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think we will do that and to do a survey and probably let you know as quick as we can, and once the survey is done.
I'm not sure when, I've forgotten the time scale now. When did you get the general letter that went from Dennis and I and the editors about the special issue? It would have been about a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not quite sure when you joined.
I think Min joined afterwards, because I did contemplate sending that letter on, but I thought maybe I should.
Yeah, well, if you didn't have it, we should send you a copy of that, because it just says a little bit about the.
Yeah, I think we had an email with some explanation from Glenn. Is that right?
Yeah.
This might be a bit more detailed than that.
So, well, it doesn't say a great deal, but we should send a copy.
Valerie, maybe we should put the content of that letter into. Maybe it might even be there already. It should be in, what I'm saying is it should be in the IDP folder, because then if additional people join the project, we can simply say, please read the advice about authors and times tables in this.
Is it there already? I certainly haven't put it there, but you're very good at doing these things, so you might have done.
Maybe it isn't, not obvious.
But that would be very useful to have a sort of, if you've just newly joined, please read this, this and this in the folder.
So maybe in the IDP folder, we should have we've got sections for all subfolders for all the different papers, but maybe we should have an overall something about, which I don't think's there at the moment, a sort of publication or something about the special issue, and then we could dump sort of instructions in there.
It's almost, it should be a sort of readme sort of folder.
Can we leave that for you, Dennis? And
actually, I think I'm tempted to actually possibly call it overview, because then one could put a couple of different things in. One could put a note of, well, then maybe see what we've got that we're going in. Anyway, we'll try and do that over the next few days.
Well, maybe could we send?
I can send the letter. Can get to Min immediately. Sure.
Yeah, I think if Min and Alice had it sort of nowish. Yeah, especially if Min wants to talk to.
If someone will just remind me when we sent it round or what it was called, I'll find it in the email and forward it.
I don't remember offhand. I can find it, but I'm
13th of February, I think I've got it.
Sorry?
13th of February is when you sent it, I think.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Called Challenges for Future Pandemics, Epidemic Special.
Yeah, I've got it. I could.
Yeah, okay. It says attached letter.
I can just forward this straight to Alice and Min if you like.
It's more to, but I want to cut out the middleman, Valerie. It's a Word file called Challenges of Future Pandemics Author Information, which I'm sure I've got somewhere in my system. So I'll just move it to the IDP folder, just as soon as I can look up where it's lurking on my computer.
Well, I can move it from the email if you like. If you could set up a folder.
It's all right. Changes. Well, actually, it's easiest if I just download it back to my computer and straight into IDP, isn't it? That's the obvious thing.
Well, I've put it into IDP, so it's just at the top level at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think that's
and if you want to move it into a folder within that, that's fine. But at least it's there for Alice and Min to look at now.
Yeah, good. Okay.
I got it. I can see it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just a little bit of author information, but it gives some links and so on, which might be useful.
Great, thanks.
I mean, the headlines are, we're aiming to have a draft by the beginning of March and submit by the end of March, if possible.
But both those can slip a teeny bit.
Yes.
And I think they can slip. We mind them slipping least if it's something where we know what's going on and there's a good reason. Like, you know, if it's that there are these two existing things which need to be fitted together in the best way, then the fact that it is a little bit later wouldn't matter at all. What we don't want is nasty surprises at the end of March where we find that something we were expecting doesn't exist, or similar problems.
Yeah.
Yes, the other thing says that because it's entirely an online publication, we don't have to have all the papers together. They'll be added to the volume as they're ready. So, you know, it's not a question of one paper that's taking forever holding up everything else. The last one can be added when it's ready, and
again,
go one by one.
Very helpful if things are at least if everything is at a stage where all cross references can be
exactly. Yeah.
I don't know whether there's scope to go back and change a paper that's already been posted to add an extra reference or two if need be, but we'll face that one if we come to it.
I think it's the cross-referencing which is the driver, isn't it, for having everything done roughly together.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Hope that's helpful, and we'll see you all
next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks, Ben.
All right. Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Ben. Oh, he's gone.